Greetings, Indie Warriors. I am Barely Magic Mike, and I am here at Playdays, which is the part of Summer Games Fest where I get some hands-on time with the latest and greatest indies coming to you in 2025 and beyond. The atmosphere here is incredibly exciting, but surprisingly chill, with each publisher having their own little cozy play area to show off the demos they've got. So I think that is more than enough of you hearing me talk. Let's go play some indies. Greetings, Indie Warriors. I am here at possibly the only Playdate booth at Summer Games Fest, and with probably the single weirdest Playdate game I have ever seen, but that is only a good thing. I'm here with JJ and Mike, director and executive producer of Blippo Plus. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Blippo Plus is a... I like that you said that it was the weirdest game that you've seen.
Really weird.
Because it definitely feels like that from our perspective. It's essentially an intergalactic TV simulator is how it's been described, which I think is a pretty accurate portrayal of this whole thing. What do you think, JJ?
Yeah, I wouldn't say simulator. It's like it is the alien cable network beaming into your Playdate.
Yeah, you get to explore an entirely different world through their television.
It is definitely very unique, and there are some very funny things in here, like the tantric computing where they're just kind of gently caressing the keyboard, and the psychic weather. I also really enjoyed that one, even if I couldn't quite hear everything with kind of the crowd and all the noise here. I definitely can't wait to get some more time with it at home when I finally get a chance to take a look myself. But what were some of the sort of inspirations around some of these channels? Because they're very out there.
Really, the inspiration is just the feeling of cable television and non-demand programming. So watching things in a community of people at a certain scheduled time, but then there's like an alien spin on it all.
Yeah, I think those two shows that you mentioned are a good example of that. Like, they speak to the world that I think is created in Blippo Plus. Like, the idea of tantric computing is a very Blippo idea.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it. And I know you told me there's sort of an overarching story if you kind of look at all the content, but you also mentioned that the content kind of changes as the weeks go by. So can you talk a little about that and how that works?
Well, like JJ was saying about you kind of have to watch with a group of people, we were really lucky to get to launch with season 2 of the Playdate. So every week, all of the shows get updated over the course of 11 different weeks. And you'll see your favorite show episode after episode react to either what's happening in their show, what's happening in their world, and what's happening on the different shows. It all sort of interrelates in a way that just feels like of one giant world. Yeah.
Like your next episode of Psychic Weather, Thursday, 10 a.m. PST. You better tune in.
Okay, so that just kind of connected the dots for me a little bit too. That it's like it was released with the first week of Playdate Season 2, but it's going to be something that has new content that comes every week. Really cool. Definitely a unique experiment. Definitely excited to see more of it. And now I want to make sure I'm playing all the time so I can see what happens every week. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Greetings, Indie Warriors. I am here with Jakub, the founder and creative director behind Table Tactics. You know, we've seen a lot of turn-based tactical kind of games recently, and I kind of glazed over this at first, but this is not your typical tactical game at all. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So this is basically a tabletop strategy game that's entirely physics-driven. There are no stats, there are no dice rolls. You physically have to knock over little figurines to its side to defeat them. So all the interactions are just determined by physics and different ways of interacting with them.
Awesome. You know, something I really appreciated about it is that it's kind of a simple game. I mean, there's certainly a lot of strategy around it, but it's very easy to pick up. There's not a lot to learn. No real like items, stats, anything like that. Just kind of building different units and then knocking them over. Very silly, very fun. So are there any other games that kind of inspired this?
We do have a history of like kind of like making very accessible and silly games, like Renoir Parade and Just Crow Things. So we kind of wanted to carry on that spirit with this one, but in a new format. And drawing from the strategy side, one big one is like Mario Rabbids, which I think does a really good job of like taking like a complex formula like XCOM and making it simpler, sillier, and accessible. And another one is also Valkyrie Chronicles, which it's a strategy game where you like take over a unit. So it turns into like a third person, like a shooter for like 10 seconds. You can move around, you can shoot like in any third person shooter. So that's kind of what we wanted to do with this, because we wanted to make you feel like you're a little miniature. So when you take over a unit, you control it, you can shoot its arrow or shoot a marble. So those are the main two inspirations.
Very cool. So when can we get our hands on the final product?
So that's a little bit TBD, ideally maybe next year. And we are aiming for Steam, PC, and as well as the consoles.
All right, thanks for your time. The game was really fun, really looking forward to it. All right, I just got some hands-on time with TOEM 2, and I'm here with a couple of the developers. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell me what you do on the team?
Yeah, hi, I'm Joost. I'm also known as Lunchable Socks, and I'm one of 2 composers on TOEM 2.
And my name is Marcus, and I'm the sound designer on the project. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm a big fan of TOEM 1, and to be perfectly honest with you, if TOEM 2 was just TOEM 1 all over again with new missions and everything, I would have been perfectly content with that, but that is not what I saw. There are a lot of new mechanics here, so why don't you tell me what TOEM 2 offers over the original?
Right. So one of the main new things is the movement system. So in the first game you weren't able to jump or climb, which you now can. So that has allowed us to really get into like the level design and make things a lot more vertical and having new ways to explore the world. And besides that, there's also, per region, there's this new attachment that comes to the camera. So it could be a pair of scissors to cut stuff, or we've also shown off the hammer that we have in the playable here in the booth. So yeah, you get to interact with the world in many new ways, still using your camera.
Very cool. You know, I obviously use the bonk feature a lot with the hammer, and I really enjoyed that, but I didn't realize that it changes by region, so that's really cool that it kind of mixes that up. One thing that I really truly enjoyed so much about this was the sound design. Every character's voice is sounding completely different. The music is great. What's it like to work on the sound for TOEM 2?
In a word, a blessing. It's super fun. It's every day is playful. Is like the one word I would use to describe my process, definitely. And the music, as you mentioned, the composer here, Joost, one of 2 of them. We got Jamal as well. A lot of people really love the music from the first game, and this game will be no different, I think.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, it has got all the coziest vibes. I'm really excited to play the full product. Do you have any sense of when it is going to launch?
2026.
Okay.
That's all we can say.
All right, that is fine. I am looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for your time. It was great.
You.
I'm here now with the 2-person development team behind Petal Runner, a new pixel art RPG that has a very distinctive visual style. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell me what your role is in the creation of Petal Runner?
My name is Danny. I'm the technical director of Nanopark Studios, and I'm the programmer behind Petal Runner.
My name is Brandon. I'm the creative director and artist for Petal Runner.
Very cool. So the demo I played was pretty short. I got some sort of narrative elements. I got to play some sort of, I'll call them WarioWare style mini games that were really fun. But I didn't get a sense quite yet of sort of the overall story of Petal Runner. So what can players expect in terms of narrative here?
So the story centers around 2 characters, Callie and Kira. Kira is Callie's pet, is an older generation white fox. And a lot of the story centers around their relationship as kind of a pet and a pet owner. So we're kind of drawing on a lot of that themes of what it's like to have a pet.
Awesome. And like I said before, the pixel art style, like the visual style, is very distinctive. Were there any particular inspirations you had in the creation of it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a throwback to like Game Boy handheld style, you know, just that cute form factor of the characters, things like Pokemon Red, Legend of Zelda on the Game Boy. And so we're kind of taking some of that DNA and then doing a modern expression of it. So it's still like low fidelity, low color palette, but we have some modern touches as well, like the widescreen and some feature things with like the map and the quest trackers and that sort of stuff playing into it.
Nice. Yeah, I mentioned as I was wrapping up the demo, but I feel like you're doing a lot with a little in terms of a very limited color palette, but still looks very distinctive and very bright and very eye-catching. So when can we play the full game?
We're expecting to release the game sometime 2026.
All right, awesome. Best of luck with development, guys. Thanks for your time. I'm here now with Graham, co-founder and producer at Drinkbox Studios, playing Blighted for the first time. Really cool Metroidvania RPG kind of hybrid. I really appreciate that almost every single Drinkbox game is trying something different. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this one?
Sure, thanks. So Blighted it's a Metroidvania and action RPG with Souls-like inspirations. So we're trying to mesh together a few different genres and also add some new things to it as well. So one of the new things that we've added, it's what we're calling the Blight system. So in Blighted, as you're playing, if you're playing well, you'll start to accumulate blight on your character. And the more blight you accumulate, the more difficult the enemies in the world will become. So they'll gain new attacks or more difficult to counter attacks. The environment will start to respond to you differently. So one thing that we're hoping to accomplish is that if experienced players coming in, they'll interact with this blight system in a way that they'll quickly get to higher blight levels, so that the world will kind of match their skill levels, so that they'll always feel a challenge. Or less experienced players will have a little bit of an easier time the first time they come in. But there will also be so the first time someone comes in, they might think blight is maybe a negative thing to be accumulating on your character because it's making the game harder. But we also want players to start to discover the positives that the blight system also gives you. So some of these things we're not revealing yet, but for example, one thing that people will quickly discover is that if you have more blight on your character, when you get hit, there will be like a provisional HP that you have a chance to attack and get some of that health back. But the more blight you have, the more provisional HP you'll have. So while you might be taking more hits or taking more damage, you'll have the opportunity to get more of that health back at higher blight levels. So we want people's journey to be at first they're like, maybe this is a negative thing, but then you start to learn the positives. And so maybe you want to try and have higher blight levels. Push people more towards that.
Yeah, one thing I appreciate about it is that it has some of those Souls-like mechanics, but I found it more approachable than a traditional Souls-like. Another thing that kind of surprised me is that there's a bit more of a narrative focus than I expected. Can you tell us a little bit more about the story?
Yeah, absolutely. So your character comes from a village where they used to have this ritual where when someone would pass away, you'd plant a seed in their brain and bury the body, and a tree would grow. And that tree would bear what we call memory fruit. So we call these trees memory trees, and the memory fruit, once consumed by someone, you would experience the memories of the person who passed away. So you can imagine this village was surrounded by these memory forests, and you could go through and eat these fruits and relive the memories of your ancestors. It was like this for generations until the main antagonist of the game, Sorcisto, he discovered that if you eat the brains of someone directly, without doing the ritual, you get their memories, but you also become more powerful. And so he became power hungry, and he basically wiped out the entire village, ate everyone's brains, cut down the memory forests. Now you're the last surviving member of this village, and you start the game. You're living in a new location, and you're trying to protect the last memory tree, and you're trying to basically you want to hunt down Sorcisto and reclaim the memories of your people. To do that, you're looking for his henchmen, and you're trying to kill them and eat their brains to try and track down where Sorcisto currently is. So that's the basic story for the game.
Yeah, it seems very interesting so far. Another thing I sort of noticed, so we have a co-op element here, and one question that I feel like comes up a lot with co-op games is it strictly designed around co-op, or do you think it's an experience that people could go through single player as well?
It's absolutely, currently we're designing the single player experience. The co-op, we haven't given it a ton of attention yet, so right now when the second player joins, nothing is really changing in the current demo, but we're going to make sure that the game scales up appropriately, so when you add a second player, it still feels challenging. So right now it makes it a little bit easier when you add a second player, but primarily we're designing it currently as a single player game. But we know all of our past games have had co-op, or almost all of our past games have had co-op. A lot of people like to play with friends. I certainly do. So we want to provide the opportunity for that. So we will definitely have like some co-op component.
All right, excellent. I had a really great time with the demo. Really can't wait to see more of Blighted. When do you think we can expect the full release? Any idea?
We don't know exactly when it's going to release. Currently, our internal targets are mid next year.
All right, excellent. Graham, thank you so much for your time. I am here with David, CEO and owner of Vermilla Studios, and I just finished playing a very sweaty-palmed, I'll call it, demo of Crisol Theater of Idols, one of the most interesting survival horror games I've seen in quite a while. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it? Because I had no idea what was going on here, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I would love to learn more.
Absolutely. Well, we are a team of 20-something people that are very, we love the survival horror genre, and we thought that adding that Spanish folklore and religious undertones will give it a fresh take. But also, we thought that the gameplay was getting a little old and repetitive, so we thought, why don't we make your blood your ammunition? So every time you reload your weapons, you use your holy blood to get those bullets, but at the same time, you will lose health in that process.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you a few times already, those reload animations are absolutely brutal and made me cringe so hard. But another aspect of the game that I found very striking was the enemy design. Can you tell me a little bit about the different types of enemies that we're going to face throughout Crisol and how we're going to fight them or not fight them?
So I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a lot of idols in the island of Tormentosa. You will encounter very different types of the idols that you may find in religious places, such as statues or maybe elements made of glass. I don't want to spoil too much, but you will fight them with your different weapons, and in some cases you will not be able to fight them, and you will have to run, take shelter, and rethink what's the next step.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I am very happy I played this in a brightly lit room full of people, because if I was playing this by myself in the dark, I would have struggled a lot more. But are there any specific survival horror games that inspired you to make this one?
I would say BioShock is one of our main inspirations, with Resident Evil 4, 7, 8. Because of that first-person approach to the survival horror and the artistic, very stylized experience that you have. So for us, those are the main, major influences, although there are some others, like Dishonored or I don't know. I'm sure once you start playing, you will discover some other influences that you could connect with Crisol.
Yeah, after playing it for a bit, I was very curious if you would mention BioShock, because there were certain elements of the visual design that really echoed BioShock, even though this is a very different game when it comes down to it. But I could see that for sure. So do you have any sort of specific release date or release window? Any idea of when we could get our hands on it?
So we will be releasing on PC and consoles in 2025, but we haven't closed in the release date yet.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Great demo, looking forward to it. I'm here with Eka, game director of Dosa Divas. Awesome name, by the way. Really like the name.
We like the alliteration of it, yeah.
Yeah, pretty great. I've only played a couple of hours of Thirsty Suitors, but in my time with the demo for Dosa Divas, it seems like a pretty major step up, especially in the combat. How did you sort of build on your experience with Thirsty Suitors with Dosa Divas?
Yeah, so Thirsty Suitors is our previous game, a game about fighting your exes, and it's also kind of a turn-based JRPG. We learned a lot making that game, and for this we wanted to kind of push it forward. We wanted a little more player expression from the mechanics, from exploration, the cooking aspects, which also this game has. So that was like taking all the elements of Thirsty, which the battle systems, we wanted something to have a little bit more active element to it. So we had kind of quick time events in that game. And here we have more of a timing elements where if you hit the button on a block or attack, you do extra damage or get extra turns. So that's sort of like the progression of learning stuff from Thirsty.
Yeah, I really like the active mechanics and how every sort of skill attack would be a different version of that. It kind of added a lot of variety to the combat that I appreciated. I also really appreciated the story. It's very silly. I mean, the story in Thirsty Suitors was pretty silly too, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the story behind Dosa Divas?
Sure, it's about these two sisters, Samara and Amani, and their spirit mech. And they're in a world where it's run by a person called Lena, who's their other sister, who runs a evil fast food corporation. And really, the villagers in this area that you explore don't know how to cook food anymore. So you're coming back into town and trying to essentially wake them up through home cooking and feeding them and reuniting these communities. And eventually, you'll battle your sister, which is like a theme in our games about family drama and reconciliation.
And as you mentioned, this is kind of a JRPG, albeit a very unique one. Yeah. Are there any specific other JRPGs that you took inspiration from for this one?
Sure. I mean, I grew up on a lot of like early Final Fantasies and things like that, but I want something shorter. It's like spending 80 to 100 hours on one of those. I don't have the time.
I could not agree with you more.
So this game is really like, can we make a tighter scope game that also has that same kind of feelings and interesting stories? So for us, like Mario RPG and Paper Mario, Sea of Stars, Octopath, there's elements of those games that we really like. I think we're seeing that with people playing Expedition now too. So
yeah, I definitely appreciate that Expedition 33 was kind of a bit shorter, at least compared to like the 100+ hour Personas. Yeah. Is there a specific length that you're kind of aiming for here? You're not sure yet?
I mean, Thirsty was anywhere from 8 to 16 hours, and we're probably, I mean, so far the mechanics of this game, people are spending a lot more time playing with the system, so it's probably somewhere in that range, but we don't know. We're not done with it yet, so
yeah,
I'm not sure.
All right, fair enough. When can we get our hands on the final product?
We're finishing it up this year. It'll be out sometime in early 2026.
All right, excellent. I had a great time with it. Looking forward to seeing more. Thanks for your time. All right, I just finished my hands-on demo with Escape Academy 2, Back to School. And I'm here with a couple of the developers. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about your role on the team?
Hi, I'm Mike Sully. I'm one of the co-founders of the studio.
I'm Blair. I'm writer and producer.
Excellent. So one question that comes up with a game like an escape room and like Escape Academy, the first game was just sort of a series of discrete rooms. People might ask, why not just do DLC instead of a sequel? But obviously, you guys have a much different structure for this sequel than I would have envisioned. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, with DLCs, you know, the response to the first game was like, great, we want more rooms. So we did that. We had a lot of fun with that. So when it came time to make a sequel, we wanted to figure out how could we kind of evolve the formula that we built through the first game in the DLC, and kind of what we landed on was figuring out a new way to connect each individual room beyond kind of a classic point-and-click level navigation. And where we landed was kind of an experimental open-world escape room format where, while you've got your traditional rooms with the ticking clocks, in between them is kind of an expanding campus that is designed as one big escape room that kind of has puzzles gating individual areas as you expand it. And inside of there are optional puzzles with, you know, little side quests with students kind of stuck in little gaggy situations, or academic themed problems that you puzzle your way out of to assist them.
Yeah, I appreciate that the game starts to open up the more that you play it, and I feel like for people like myself who are a little burnt out on open world games, this is something very different. But I noticed there's also a single player and a co-op element, so how do the experiences differ between those two styles of play?
And so single player and co-op is something we had on the first game too. Our background as a studio is in building like real world escape rooms before the COVID pandemic. That's what we actually started doing. And Escape Academy was our first like traditional video game. And so we brought that kind of like co-op first like mindset into it. But we did see that there was like a lot of interest in the single player mode. And I think something that's cool about the sequel being there's like optional content. You can choose which puzzles to play, which areas to explore, is that like as a single player, if you're like really into the more like Sudoku or like logic grid type puzzles, you can go super deep on that, and you don't have to convince your co-op partner to join you on the Sudoku club in school. I think it's like you When you play single player, I think kind of note taking is also maybe a little bit more important. You want to like talk to yourself a little bit, but all the puzzles, they play the same in single player and multiplayer. We like to have the multiplayer be like multiple brains working on the problem, not so much like two people have to stand on a switch. And so any of the content that you do with two players, you can also totally do those puzzles with single player.
All right, awesome. Well, I had a great time with the demo. When can we play the final product?
We don't have an announced date yet, but 2026. Look out next year.
All right, excellent. Thank you guys for your time. I am here at the Blumhouse booth, and I just played Grave Seasons, which is a very unique mix of farming sim and horror game. So why don't you guys tell me, well, first of all, introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about your role on the team.
Yeah. I'm Emmett. I'm the co-founder and narrative director of Perfect Garbage Studios. And
yeah, I'm Nikki. I'm the lead programmer at Perfect Garbage.
So I definitely don't see this sort of combination very often. So what kind of inspired you to make a chill farming sim that is very relaxing until it is not at all?
So we love the preparation element of farming sims. We love being able to, the management, we love being able to sort of prepare our day, prepare our farm. But also there are a ton of people on the team who are huge horror fans. And so we really wanted to see if we could combine those things in a way that was innovative and different and surprising, but also incredibly fun and lovely too. So yeah, that's sort of where the genesis of the idea came from.
I think one sort of crossover, between farming sims and horror games is kind of survival elements, and I think those sort of manifest themselves very differently depending on the genre. So how would you say you sort of incorporated that in this, given that it's a combo of those two genres?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about farming sims is that you have the chance to sort of plant and grow things and integrate yourself into the town. So like Emmett said before, preparation is really key. So as you learn more about the town, as you learn more about the killer, as you learn more about the potential victim, you'll have the chance to plant certain things that can help you to maybe stop the murders as they're happening. So I think that's kind of the survival element is more, we want you to be able to maybe prevent the murders from happening and do that through the things that you're growing on your farm and the ways that you're integrating yourself in the town.
When can we get our hands on Grave Seasons?
So we're keeping it under wraps at the moment, but we have a release trailer coming soon. That'll be talking about gameplay, all kinds of other stuff coming up soon, so you'll be able to have a little bit more information very soon about release date for Grave Seasons.
All right, excellent. Looking forward to hearing more about that and getting my hands on the final product eventually. So thank you both for your time. All right, I am here with Johnny from Beethoven and Dinosaur, director of Mixtape. And this is a little preliminary because I have a couple of appointments still today, but as of right now, this is my game of Playdays. This is my favorite game I have played. It was beautiful, it was funny, it was shocking. I'm not going to say why. That would totally be a spoiler. I'm not going to say anything more about that. What inspired this as the direction you decided to take after The Artful Escape, which is a game I personally loved?
Thank you, first of all. Thanks very much. Thanks for the review. I loved that. I think the first thing we started with was the mixtape, was the music. The first track you heard is That's Good by Devo, which has been number one on my Spotify playlist for several years. And I listen to it every single day at work, and every day I love it more. And so we started with that soundtrack, and then we wanted to weave this linear story that would mark the same points of the music, the same emotional points of the music. And we made... Initially, we haven't spoken about this much, but we made a horizontal slice of the game. Usually developers will make a vertical slice where you make a very detailed, small version to show a developer or show your team what the idea is. But we made the whole game start to finish in a very basic, almost animatic style, with very simple gameplay, or sometimes it would just say they play baseball here or whatever. And then we would get the story right, get the... and then we get the story around that, and then we would rearrange the mixtape to see if it worked better in different arrangements, and then that's how we kind of built up Mixtape from the horizontal slice and then built up.
That is incredible, and you can tell it's a game built around music. Every scene has so much kind of passion to it and so much variety and all the different gameplay mechanics that show up. Now, it's a very narrative-focused game, clearly, but can you tell us a little bit about the sort of different gameplay mechanics we'll see throughout it?
Yeah, there's a mixtape of music, but there's also a mixtape of mechanics. So there's, skateboarding in some sections. There's you toilet paper a house is a level I'm really proud of, just because our toilet paper mechanic is unbelievable. And you play baseball, you pull slushies, and then there's other things that we sort of try and do to use the medium to our advantage, to use that kind of gameplay club in your bag to try and express more abstract concepts than just difficulty. Like, we have a level where you're betrayed by a friend and she kind of lifts up in the air and starts to float home through the city in black and white, and just using those kind of mechanics of just guiding this devastated player back to their house. That's how I always remember when my stomach drops and I have to, after some horrible event, I kind of float backwards. So I think we try and use mechanics as a way to accentuate the different emotions of the music and the characters.
Yeah, very cool. And I did not personally play the toilet papering sequence, obviously, but very excited to see that. Yeah. One thing, I kind of already alluded to this, but I find the visual style of Mixtape to be so striking in such a unique way, this sort of stop motion animation style. Is there anything in particular that inspired that?
I think a lot. We tried to do some really Tim Burton-y stuff in a previous project where we had little creatures and we started to make them move. And obviously there is, I have to also admit there is a trend of, going on the 2s or the 3s at the moment. And, I won't deny that. But, from an indie point of view, like, I think I've never worked at a AAA, who knows, but I'm just going to guess. AAA's, you can start with a blank slate, you have a large team and you get an art director and you look at your influences and you build from there. With an indie team, you have your core artists there and you know their strengths and you know what they want to do, and you also know what they want to bring to the project, which is important as well. So instead of starting from scratch, you actually start with these great pieces already on the board, and then you can start to build, what's our 3D artist want to do, which direction's he going to take, and our 2D artist, our traditional artist, Arden, who I will add also did all of the 2D animation, the 2D sprites and illustrations in The Artful Escape, became a character artist and made Rockford the main character. So it's always investing in your team and building them up and helping them be who they want to be and what their artistic output is. And you start to build that up, and then you get the vibe of the story and it starts to coalesce, because in narrative-focused games, story-focused games, it's always about the sum of the parts. It's not something that's necessarily the core driver. The music needs to be lifting, and the cinematics and the gameplay and everything needs to come together in a harmonious way to reach that crescendo when you want to hit it. So I think it's something that's naturally built up from the talent that you have.
Honestly, based on the demo I played, I can tell that all of this passion for your concept is going to be reflected in this final product. Do you have a release window or anything to announce in terms of when we can play it?
No.
Nice. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, man.
All right, I am here at the Annapurna House with Toby, designer of Morsels. I really dig the look of this whole area. Very comfortable to do a demo on this pink fuzzy couch that you have over here. And I really just enjoyed my time with Morsels a lot. Very intriguing looking game, especially. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So Morsels is a roguelike action shooter game where you collect these different characters that have different play styles, different types of attacks, and different special abilities, and you sort of can switch between them at whatever moment you want, and sort of manage a little roster, a little team, kill a bunch of enemies, and sort of find little treats and treasures. But yeah, it's a small game. It's a slightly weird game, and we try to make something that kind of has a bit of a unique look and feel to it, something that feels a little bit kind of strange and a little bit different, because obviously there are a lot of action roguelikes out there. A lot of them are really good.
What sort of aspects would you say you put into Morsels that make it a little bit different from your traditional action roguelike?
So I think a couple of things that we're doing that we think are a little bit unique maybe are the sort of multiple characters that you have to kind of manage and switch between. That's quite a central mechanic to Morsels that I think you probably don't see too much.
I noticed that the art style here is really incredible. It looks like a ton of work went into the pixel art. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of your development process, some of the inspirations that you had going into this, especially because you mentioned this has been in development for quite a while, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been working with pixel art for like a long time. It's been my job for quite a few years now. And with this one, I wanted to do something like a little bit more, I guess, more technically advanced than what I'm used to. So we're kind of using more like lighting and puppetry and interesting shaders. So I wanted to make it like a little bit more high definition, a little bit more fancy than stuff I've done previously myself. We use like spine animations for some of the characters, and I definitely try to make things look kind of quite puppet-like a Jim Henson style puppet, kind of with that kind of slightly uncanny movement and the sort of knobbly looking textures.
Cool. Well, honestly, if my demo was any indication, this is definitely going to be one to look out for when it comes out. Do you have a release date or a release window yet when we can get our hands on it?
We're going for this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Toby, for your time. Really appreciate it. I am back at the Annapurna area, and I just played Snap and Grab, a very interesting game that Cesius, senior level designer and artist, described as Hitman meets Pokemon Snap. Please tell me more about that.
Snap and Grab is a high-stakes crime heist game? Yeah, crime heist game that where you play as our protagonist, Nifty Nevada, and you are in the mood to steal some nice goods for your apartment, all alongside your crew. And Nifty doesn't get her hands dirty, so all her job is to go inside, snap a bunch of pics of what could be threats, distractions, and valuables, and then plan for her crewmates to like steal stuff. You're also able to play a bunch of photo challenges where you kind of have to like puzzle out how you take a photo. And that might mean putting a bunch of stuff in a specific place and then snapping it, or lining shots up in a very perfect manner.
Yeah, it sounds like you get a lot of content out of these very open, elaborate locations, which is going to be really cool and add a lot of replayability to each of them.
Yeah.
I also really liked the vibe of it. Not only is it very colorful, but No Goblin has previously done the game Roundabout, which is a ridiculous game that I really enjoy, and I felt kind of similar levels of silliness here, maybe even more silly. What were some of your inspirations around the overall vibe?
Definitely a lot of humor amongst the team, a lot of inside jokes that just became official jokes, and just overall good energy from our teammates that really allowed us to like flourish out and give the game so much like style. Yeah. I want to say that like big inspirations from the 80s as well, a lot of 80s music inspiration, and yeah, just a lot of team humor.
Awesome. I think I speak for the entire team at I Dream of Indie Games when we say this is the kind of weirdness that we love to see from the indie scene that we'll never see in a AAA title. So when can we play the final product?
You can play Snap and Grab in 2026. Stay tuned on the No Goblin page and Annapurna's page for more information on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And there you have it, folks. We have tons of interesting indie games to look forward to, games that showcase the strangeness and passion and creativity that these indie developers have for their projects. I would say that every demo I played here ranged from good to great, but Mixtape was probably the single standout. When I finished that demo, I was so excited to play more of it. I'm really, really eager to get my hands on the final product there. But some other games were kind of standouts too. I was really impressed by TOEM too. I couldn't really imagine how they could build on the first game, but they managed to add a bunch of really cool mechanics with some platforming and the sort of block breaking that I was able to experience in the demo. And then Crisol Theater of Idols. That was a really interesting horror game, sort of mixing Resident Evil, Bioshock, and in my opinion, sort of the vibes of Lies of P a little bit. Very interesting game, and looking forward to getting my hands on the full product there too. So overall, great event, lots to look forward to, and keep it here on I Dream of Indie Games for coverage of the latest and greatest in the indie scene.